Hello there and welcome to Il Salotto Sessions. I am Sara Seravalli, an Italian event organizer with a profound enthusiasm for design and architecture, bringing over 15 years of experience from my work across showrooms in Milan, Paris and London. Fueled by a passion for connecting people in the design world, I founded Design Pop-Up in 2014, a specification-focused event that has since traveled throughout the UK and Ireland. Today I'm expanding my vision with Il Salotto, a vibrant space, both physical and virtual, dedicated to inspiring meaningful conversations and fostering connections within the design community. I hope you will enjoy my chats. Hello there and welcome to this new episode of Il Salotto Session. Today I've got a fellow podcaster in the studio with me. Well, it's kind of a studio, it's just the office. Anyway, welcome Louise Rodgers from Eidyia. How are you doing, Louise?
I'm good, and thank you for inviting me. It's quite nice to be on the other side of the microphone.
Getting interviewed instead of interviewing.
Exactly, yes.
So,
Yes.
Louise, you and I met a long time ago. So we're not going to say how many years ago because it's too many. I was still in
Yeah.
London at the time, and we had a chance to work together at a couple of charity events. And then you very kindly, when I was moving up to Scotland, introduced me to the one that is now one of my best industry friends. So I've got lots to thank you for, which is Ross Hunter at Graven. So
I
thank you
didn't
very
know
much for that.
I mean, I remember introducing you, but I didn't know that he'd become. Yeah, I was doing PR for them at the time, and yeah, I enjoyed working with Ross and with Graven very much.
They are a lovely team, and Ross has been so good for me and is such a lovely guy. So thank you again. That was a very handy introduction.
No, I'm pleased.
So let's catch up on the last. So when I met you, you were doing something completely different to what you're doing now. Talk us through your last few years and why you changed your career and started this idea, which is completely different to what you were doing before.
Okay, well, when we met, I was in public relations, and I worked mainly in the design and architecture sector as a PR consultant. And at that time, I believe when we met, Sarah, I was a co-director of a small company, and I specialized in that sector. And I had been doing PR for 25 years. And then I was a co-founder of that company. And then 10 years ago now, I decided to leave. I decided it sort of coincided with the advent of social media and as a tool for PR use and content taking over from good old fashioned press relations and branding consultancy and things. And
you said I can't be bothered with this younger stuff. It's time to move on.
Like, do you know what? I can't be bothered with, I just can't be bothered with it all. I can't be bothered to learn a whole new set of skills. And I just had a feeling that there was something different waiting for me. So I left and I did some PR consultancy for a while. But my leaving was not easy. I can say that now because it's 10 years ago. It was not an easy leaving. The relationships with my co-founders weren't brilliant at the end. And during that time, I was supported and helped by a friend who had recently trained to be a coach. And my first training, even before I did PR, was in journalism. And the more I experienced and learned about coaching, the more I realized that it kind of brought lots of elements of my skill set together. Asking good open questions, understanding the brief in PR terms, but really getting a deep understanding of what the client's obstacles are, what their challenges are, and working with them to solve them, but just doing it now through coaching. So I retrained. I did a postgraduate in coaching, and Eidyia was the company name I came up with when I first left PR and started coaching. And I was dancing around the kitchen one night after a couple of glasses of red wine, Googling names that I might be able to adopt as mine. And I can't remember how it came up, but Eidyia came up, and she was an obscure Greek goddess of wisdom. And I thought, oh God,
Yeah, and it's actually spelled Eidyia. So I had to ask
yeah.
you how to pronounce it before we started because I had no clue.
Well, yeah, and do you know what? I had that with my previous company as well, which I don't want to talk about them, but a lot of people said, well, nobody will know how to pronounce it or what it is. And I said, well, that's fine because, I'm a communicator, I'm in PR, I understand how these things work. It gives me an opportunity to explain and to spell it out and to, if you're called something really straightforward, like your name, I mean, a lot of coaches, they'll have a domain name, which is just their name.co.uk. And I really didn't want that. I think coaching is one of those things like PR that's all about the client. It's not, I'm slightly, I get the ick with coaches that are all about promoting themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. I should probably do some more work on myself, but um, because I think it's about your clients. It's about, their priorities and their challenges and not so much about you. So I thought the idea was, it kind of captured that sense of, I'm older now. I thought a Greek goddess of wisdom. I thought, yeah, I'll own that. I've
Makes
earned
sense. Yeah.
a badge of wisdom to some extent. So that's how that came about.
So, but you're still involved with very much with the build environment.
Yes. Yeah, I am. When I first trained, I have lots of friends and very close contacts within the built environment sector. And when I met you, although I met you around design and architecture, I also did planning applications, community consultation around planning applications. So I had a lot of contacts across the sector. And when you learn a new profession, your clients are inevitably and invariably going to come from the people that your network.
Yeah.
And that was my network. And also, I felt that I had a real understanding of that network. And one of the things that I encountered quite often and discussed with my coaching colleague, Rachel Birchmore, and my co host for the podcast, which is called Coaches on the Couch, was that there was a lot of people, architects that we knew who were who were founders or directors of architectural businesses or built environment consultancies. And they said, well, we've promoted these people to be associates, but they don't seem to understand what that means and how they need to be different, because
Yeah.
they get people in the sector get promoted because they're really good architects quite often, or really good engineers, and their people management skills may not be quite, their leadership skills may not be quite on a level with their architectural or engineering or whatever their specialism is. So
Yeah.
we came together and discussed this, and we devised a program called Step Up, which
Yep.
was aimed, it's broadened a bit now, at working with groups within a single organization around how people can step up into slightly bigger, elevated roles, let go perhaps of the day to day. I always tend to do that, kind of straightening my shoulders, because it's like lifting yourself above the weeds and taking
Yep.
on more of a leadership role within the practice. So we thought we'd spotted a gap in the market, and so it turned out to be.
Yeah. So this is very interesting because I've done quite a lot of work last year on well-being and mental health, and obviously the building industry is an industry where there is some serious pressures that whether you're an architect, a contractor, or a developer, you have to, whether it's budget or deadlines, there is some severe pressures. So one of the speakers I worked with last year, she's an occupational psychologist at the Aberdeen University, and with her we discussed. It was all about women, so we discussed about leadership styles. And through my career, I had my previous life, when I was working in sports, I had a job where I was actually high responsible for a large number of people. We discussed about leadership styles and how some women try to mimic men rather than just be a
Yeah,
woman,
yeah,
And I always thought
yeah.
that was incredibly wrong, and say, I can't be that, because how can somebody take you seriously if you are somebody you are not? So I
Yeah,
don't know
no,
if
I
you ever
totally
come
agree.
across. Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot. And one of the things that Rachel and I are both quite passionate about is working with individuals to help them discover what kind of leader they are and what kind of leader they need to be and want to be. And I mean, we're working with a global architectural practice at the moment, and we're about to start our third cohort with that practice. So by the time we've finished that cohort, we'll have worked with around 60 people who are all at a similar level across the practice. It's been a huge privilege to be in the position of helping that practice to achieve cultural change in the way that they lead their people. And there have certainly been people within all those cohorts, and they are often women, you're right, but sometimes they're men as well, who have modeled how they think they need to be on as leaders, on the leaders that they've experienced and seen. I mean, understandably, that's what we do. And uh, and that's changing. And there's no cookie cutter for leadership. There is no one way to lead. And I mean, certainly, actually, on the last cohort with that global architectural practice, there's one woman that I coached, and she said it was an absolute turning point for me when I realized that I could be the leader that I want to be, that I didn't have to fit into some kind of predetermined mold of what leader is and what leadership is, because a much richer it's a much richer concept and activity than sorry, I distracted myself then because I was thinking about what you said about wellness and stuff. A lot of that came out during the COVID time as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we did a lot of coaching during COVID, and leaders had to step up in a different way during COVID.
Yes.
And they had to, because they were in people's homes all of a sudden, and home and work, the boundaries kind of went. So I think that was a real opportunity. Obviously it was a huge tragedy for, many millions of people, but it was a opportunity in some way for people to start to think differently about
Yeah,
leadership.
but also it pushed us to take care of our mental health better, because we all struggled. It's not natural to be stuck in your house. I'm lucky, I've got a huge garden, and one of my besties came up to do lockdown with me because she was living in a bedsit in London. So come over to Scotland, we got more space. But if you're stuck in your own small flat in a city center, you don't get a chance to go out and enjoy the sunshine and get your vitamin D, and it's so hard.
It was a really, really difficult time, and a lot of that's when we launched Coaches on the Couch, because we saw that leaders were struggling with how to navigate these really choppy waters. And we felt, I mean, obviously we're marketing, Rachel has a not dissimilar, when Rachel was doing BD before she became a coach. So we knew that we needed to find a way to keep in touch with our clients and potential clients and our network. And that's how Coaches on the Couch came into being, because we found that we both knew people who were working out how to navigate. We were all working out, let's face it wasn't just leadership. We were all working out how to navigate it. And, leaders were in a position where they were saying, well, we don't know when we're going to open. We don't know what's happening. We don't know when we're going to be able to open the office. We don't know whether we're going to be able to keep the business going. We don't know. And it was an unusual position an uncomfortable position for many people to be in, that state of uncertainty for such a prolonged period of time. There is I read something written by another coach the other week that was saying that perhaps when we start working with new people, one of our kind of intake questions should always be, tell me about your experience of the pandemic, because everybody's experience was so different and unique to them. And there was such a will to get over and move on that I think sometimes we've underestimated the lasting effects. Now I'm talking to you from my loft room in my seaside house, because COVID for me meant that I couldn't go into central London. All my work moved online.
Yeah.
And I thought, and when it was possible to travel again and see people in person, by then I'd realized that coaching works very well online. It sometimes for some people, and in some cases it works better. So I thought, all right, I can leave London now. So I moved to the seaside.
Yes, it's a great change. I would not be able to come back and live in London anymore. I love this space I've
No,
got
me
here.
neither.
So,
No, me neither.
what are the specific challenges for the building industry, do you think?
Current challenges, I would say I've been thinking about this because I have a column for BD, for Building Design magazine as well, and they asked me to write something about New Year challenges at the end of last year, and actually my response was, "No, I'm not gonna do that. I just want everybody to switch off and enjoy the holidays. We're all knackered. We all need a break. Let's think about next year when it happens." But I have been thinking about it more since. I think that currently the challenges are still around. One of them is still around hybrid working.
Yeah.
Leaders don't really know how to get people back into the office, whether to get people back into the office, whether their business is suffering because people aren't back in the office. They have fears that their culture and the sense of belonging in the organization has been negatively impacted by hybrid working. So there's a whole load of issues around, and I've got no answers, by the way, around hybrid working. I think another one, I read that there was a study in 2014 about a 5-generation workforce. And they said that by 2025, we will have one of those. I'm not seeing a huge amount of evidence. That means there'd be people in the workforce of 18 and 70 odd. But having said that, I'm much closer to 70 than 18, and I'm still working. And I'm becoming, because of things that are happening in my life, and because my style of coaching is always to not overshare, but let people know, because I think it encourages openness, that I'm coping with a father who's aging and not well, and it's all been very difficult. But one of the issues in the workplace is that we have people at different stages of life who are coping with different things,
Yeah.
whether it's not being able to afford to live in London, not being able to afford a mortgage, and not being able to afford to leave home, not being able to afford to come into work every day because of the transport costs and paying for lunch, and then people who are struggling with parenting, and then later in life caring responsibilities, and that sort of cyclical nature of life is really, I think it's a lot of, I think it's in a lot of people's minds. Certainly since I've been saying about my struggles with my own dad, people have said yes. I've been experiencing.
It rings a
So I think
bell.
that's another one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, of
So
course,
I
it's
was
AI, which I'm not an expert on, so I don't want to talk too much about that anyway.
Well, so I was speaking to one of the previous podcasts we've done, which was very interesting. It was with Cara Tierney, which is the head of property at Virgin Media, sorry, Virgin Money,
Mm,
and they just opened the most beautiful new offices in Glasgow city centre. So one of the
mm,
things she said, which is very interesting because it links up with just what you're talking about. So the gift, she called it the gift of COVID, which sounds like a blasphemy with everything that people have gone through. But in reality, there is some good things that came out of that horrible situation. And that's the extra flexibility that all of a sudden we've got. As you say, whether you're caring for somebody, your parent, or you've got children like me, and all of a sudden she's sick and I need to drop everything I've got to go pick her up at school. So now is the fact that we can work from home, and it's safe to work from home, and it doesn't affect on our productivity. But then at the same time, we still want to go to the office because the interaction with your colleagues is enriching. It's not just the social and the community, is also your ideas, bouncing off ideas with each other. It makes such a big difference. So what she was saying is that the COVID pushed them to change the company culture and to change the habit. And you don't need to be in the office all the time. It's good to have people in the office. So I think they found a good balance between give the flexibility that people need for one reason or the other. You need to go to the GP, or you have a hospital appointment, or whichever reason you need to work from home one day. But then at the same time, make an office that is so beautiful and it gives you so much that actually makes you want to leave the house. I thought that was a very interesting perspective. They're
no,
now
I
using the office
yeah,
to attract the best talent.
exactly. And you need to, want people to want to come in. I mean, it's almost, I'm not going to say it's easy, but for people who are involved in very big companies like a Virgin Money, did you say? Then
Yeah.
it's much easier than if you're an architectural practice and you've got 30 or 40 employees and you genuinely feel that the magic and collaborative energy and creativity that's generated by people all sharing the same space at the same time has been compromised, if not lost. I mean, I'm working with a practice at the moment where they give people the option to work at home on Mondays and Fridays. So there is nobody in the office on a Monday and a Friday. And the leader, it's a real challenge to leadership. I do believe, I mean, I do believe, and I know people who believe more strongly than I do that there's some missing out that happens as a result, particularly for younger people, of not going into work, not going into a
Learn.
learning, mentoring, being in the buzz. I mean, if I think back to the beginning of my own career and how important the office environment was, but some of these young people, you know, they did their degrees online. You know, they're almost kind of, you could say desocialized, or you could say socialized to be online, whichever, whether you're half full or half empty. But leaders are really grappling with that challenge. And a lot of my clients build offices. So what are we saying if we're saying there is no need for beautiful office spaces anymore? You're telling some of my clients that their commercial clients are going to shift into some other market, and they're not going to be in business because there'll be no new offices built. So understandably, many architects who work in that sector are keen to promote the fact that an office is incredibly important.
And that's interesting, because I was speaking to some industry people up in Scotland, and in reality, the forecast for the commercial office market is on the rise again up here. Yeah,
good. I don't
there
know
is
about
there,
that.
they are seeing
in London. I don't know.
Yeah. Because I think everybody, you know, at the beginning of lockdown, I was speaking to some company owners, say the productivity has gone up through the roof, right? But then over time,
the ground.
yeah, but then in reality, now they want people back in the office because, as you say, you're missing out so many things. You know, the mentoring, the learning,
Well, I think, you know, as I said, during COVID, a lot of the work that Rachel and I were doing with people, we stopped talking about leadership with groups of people and cohorts of people that work for the same company, because everything we do is bespoke, but it's always designed around the company that we're working with. And we switched more into well-being, because you're right, productivity went through the roof. Because if you're living in a flat share and you're working in your bedroom, and, you know, why would you not end up doing 15, 16 hours? You know, it became quite toxic in a way, because we all met teams. People were dealing with back-to-back meetings. Nobody was picking up the phone. Everybody was bouncing from one conversation into another, sitting in a chair for, you know, hours and hours a day, not getting outside, not doing. So no wonder productivity went through the roof. A lot of people got burnt out as well.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, it was difficult.
Right. So if you were to talk to your younger self, how would you coach her?
Nice question.
What's the little piece of advice you wish somebody gave you when you were 20?
That careers aren't linear. That except there is another podcast actually called Squiggly Careers. I don't know whether you know that one. I like it very much. And I like the name very much because it's based on the premise that careers are squiggly. You know, I've done so many different things in my life. And people say you only get one life. I would say, of course, there's a truth in that, but actually you can live several within one.
Yeah.
So from journalism to PR consultant to coach, and that feeling that everything that I did before was some really random things. ended up bringing me to where I'm meant to be at the moment. Who knows? It might change. I
Yeah.
definitely want to write more in my future. So it would be, you don't have to think that your first job is the beginning. It's not necessarily the foundation of a linear career path. It will give you an experience that you will take forward, but it might be in something completely different and in a different direction.
Yeah, it's so funny. I had a similar conversation very recently about myself. I've been bouncing off from I started as a journalist like you, and then I went into marketing and events, and then came to London. So it's so funny how I thought it was a completely dysfunctional career, but then at the end of the day, every single experience I had in the 16 years before I started my own business, everything came together in what I'm doing now is mesmerizing.
Yeah, it's great. So I think that that's what I would say to my younger self. Don't worry about it. Whatever you're doing, it's the right thing. It will all prove to have been the right thing in the future.
Fantastic. Listen, any chance we can have you up in Glasgow?
I'd love to come up to Glasgow again. I really enjoyed working with Graven Images. I mean, they work, as you know, a lot in interiors, in hotels and bars. So they were always very good visits that I made to Glasgow. And I haven't been for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I
Okay,
need
so
a
when
good.
you up to Glasgow, you can have a chat with our friends at Il Salotto then.
Yeah, maybe you should have an event and I should come and do something at it.
Yeah,
Let's
come and
I think
have
about that.
yeah, let's do that. Right. In the
Okay.
meantime, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And hope to see you again in person before too long.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening to Il Salotto Sessions. If you enjoyed the chat, please make sure you share with your friends and follow our podcast on Spotify or Apple Podcast. For more information on our events, please visit ilsalotto.design and designpopup.com. You can also find us on Instagram _designpopup and Il Salotto Glasgow as well as LinkedIn. Should you have any feedback, questions or suggestions, please do get in touch at hello@ilsalotto.design. We would love to hear from you. Thank you.